to episode 6 of Just Ask Mrs. Hurlbut. Mrs. Hurlbut. And our topic today is intimacy. Now, intimacy is a very broad word, so give me some time to unpack it, and hopefully I'll have some answers for you about this topic. With me today is another Hurlbut. This time is my son, Gus. Hi, Gus.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So Gus is going to be sharing some questions that you have sent in about intimacy. But before he asks those questions, hopefully I'm not going to be answering them by some of the things I'm saying. But when we talk about intimacy today, we're really talking about a deep and sacred closeness. You can have intimacy with anybody in your life. The intimacy you have with your parents is different from the intimacy you have with your friends, which is different from the intimacy you have with a romantic partner. But it's a closeness and a vulnerability that you offer somebody because you have complete and total trust in them. So when we talk about intimacy, we're not always talking about physical intimacy or sex, just so we're clear. There's also levels of intimacy, which I will probably bring up depending on what questions you ask me. So, Gus, why don't we get started?
Let's go ahead with the first question. It is, I really like this girl who is a friend. Do I make a move?
Ooh, the friend zone. There's a really great film called The Dating Project. You gotta watch it. There's a mention of the friend zone and how that's a really advanced move, because when you want to move out of the friend zone, you're taking a big risk. So if you really like somebody who you're already friends with, you really want to speak to them about this. You need to be vulnerable and courageous enough to say, listen, I would be really interested in pursuing this further than a friendship. I really like you, but I don't want to risk losing this friendship. So if the person says, yes, I'm willing to give that a try because I feel the same way, you're usually in pretty good shape. But the goal would be to move forward in a way where you're constantly talking through it, so that if it doesn't work out, you can go back to being friends again. Or if it gets more and more serious, you're both in agreement that it's getting more and more serious. Interestingly enough, fun fact, when a couple starts out as friends first, they generally have more success in their relationship, especially if it turns into marriage. And that's usually because people who are friends tend to share love languages. And when you have a shared love language, it's very easy to know how someone receives love, because you receive it the exact same way. So if you're friends first, you tend to have stronger romantic relationships, but you are risking the friendship if the relationship doesn't work. It also risks all the other friends that you're friends with, right? So if it doesn't work out, then you've got a problem. Who's going to stay in the circle of friends? Or are you going to be able to be friends again? So it's really tricky. We call it an advanced move, but it can be done. And I have seen many, many relationships succeed as a result of going out of the friend zone. I've also seen people able to go back into the friend zone after a breakup. That's a very mature move. I'm sure, Gus, you and most people you know have seen the one that didn't go so well, right? The people who went back, broke up, and then it damaged groups of friendships, right? Forever. So don't let that happen. Know full well from the get-go, it's a risk, but we're going to communicate it. We're going to be very clear that if it doesn't work out, we're going to promise that we're going to fight for the friendship again. Or if it does work out, we're going to cherish the fact that it started as a friendship. It's really, I think it's oftentimes a risk worth taking. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think the friend zone strategy is a great strategy for almost everybody. And relationships are a friendship on a deeper level, so you gotta
absolutely are.
You gotta start somewhere.
And when you start when you weren't friends and you just were attracted to each other. Case in point, my marriage, my husband, we were not friends at all. I'd never laid eyes on him before until I met him for the first time, and I crushed on him. And we don't have the same love language at all. And so we have to work a lot harder to fill each other's love tanks, essentially, is what, love languages are all about. Loving each other the way that they receive love. So it's trickier, but very doable. So friendship turning into relationships can be a really great thing. But if it doesn't work, you should make sure that you've already discussed all that ahead of time so that when it ends well. Okay, question number 2. What do you got?
All right, so if you get out of the friend zone, hopefully, my boyfriend can be annoying sometimes. What can I change? What can I do to change that?
Well, the reality is everyone's going to be annoying. Nobody's perfect. I'll say it again. Everyone can be annoying. No one's perfect. Please do not look for perfection. If you're dating somebody and they're annoying you, you are moving through the levels of intimacy. I teach my students all about the 6 R's. The first R is romance. So when you meet somebody and you fall in love with them, they're perfect. You see nothing wrong. It's just rainbows and butterflies. And somewhere, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, somewhere along the way you realize they're not perfect. So maybe it's a month into the relationship. Maybe it's 3 days into the relationship. I don't know. But you have to decide, whoa, this is really annoying. That's called reality. Here's the reality. This person's not perfect. What's a good annoying habit? I always ask my students, and they'll say things like, his car is really messy, or he's always spending time with his friends. He tends to prioritize them over me. There's going to be something that's annoying, whatever it might be. You have to decide, is it worth continuing this relationship? Because you're just dating. And you can jump ship anytime you want when you're dating. When you're married, it's a totally different story. But if you're dating and that annoyance is something that you consider a deal breaker, get out. But it might not be something that's a deal breaker. It might be something that's very manageable. And if it is manageable, then you got to react in some way. How are you going to react? I'll let it go. I'll learn to live with this. What you shouldn't do is try to change them, because that's probably not going to go away. That's who they are, and that's the person you fell in love with, and so you may have to make room for it. It's when it comes to blows and you go to the next R, which is resistance. Resistance can be the moment where you're like, yeah, no, I cannot deal with that. He's never around. He's always with his friends. He doesn't seem to care about me. You might want to think about jumping ship, because to fight for that when you're dating, that can be really a lot more work than anyone's willing to put in. Now, if you do work it out, you move to reflection, you talk it through, you move to renewal. When you move through renewal, you get to start all over again, and you get back to the romance. Here's the thing. Love begins as a feeling. That's a romance. But then it becomes a choice. You got to choose every day. Is this what I want? Am I choosing to love this person? I'm married. I committed to doing that, so I choose love every day. But if you're in a dating relationship and that person's annoying you and it gets worse and worse and worse, you get to choose. Am I sticking this out, or am I leaving? Is this a deal breaker, or is this something that I can work through? And be careful that you know what your limitations are. I always say, if there's any kind of control or abuse or mental issues, or what's the third one? I always forget. Addiction. Those are not annoyances. Those are big, huge red flags that you can't fix yourself. So you either get the help that person needs, or you get yourself out of that situation. So annoyances, you got to know what your annoyances are. Are they small, or are they large? And if you don't know, ask somebody. Find somebody you know and love and say, here's what's happening. And this really annoys me. And that person who you know and love might say to you, that's a big deal. Or they might say to you, really? You're going to let that bother you? Let somebody who's wise into your life to help you define whether or not it's just an annoyance or something bigger.
Well, that leads us perfectly into our next question,
Which
actually,
is?
which would be which arguments are worth solving and which ones aren't?
Oh, gosh, it totally depends on the person. It depends on how far they are into their relationship. It depends on whether it's in their control or out of their control. There's a lot of factors to consider. But if you're, 18 to 25 years old and you're in a dating relationship, yeah, you might say you're not single, but you're not married, so therefore you are single. So you got to know how to argue. How do you argue? Because everyone's going to argue. But are you going to argue in a healthy way, in a respectful way? Are you talking or are you yelling? Are you responding or are you reacting? Are you listening or are you speaking? The list goes on and on and on. So how you argue is really important. What you're arguing about is also really important. And the degree to which you each see the topic. Like maybe you think it's really a big deal and the other person thinks it's not a big deal. That's something worth considering. So what was the exact question? How do you...
Which arguments are worth solving and which ones aren't? So can you give us an example of which one might be worth fighting for and which one might not be?
In a dating relationship, you're seniors in high school, you're thinking about going away to school, you can't decide whether or not to go to the same general area or to try to survive long distance, whatever that might be, and you argue about it, and you have two very different ideas about how to solve that, that's when you get stuck in a rut and you have to really think, is this relationship worth continuing? Because you and I see the future very differently. What's another example? Definitely how much time we spend together. That goes back to, I think, episode 2, was about one-sided relationships. Is this one-sided? Are you arguing a point that you both hear what the other person is saying? Is there any kind of, yes, I hear you, and? Or is it just, nope, you're completely wrong?
If they can't come to a conclusion, do you think it's okay to agree to disagree?
Absolutely. That's my life, Gus. That is my life. You got to agree to disagree, and that's the beauty of a good, sustainable relationship, because you're not always going to agree, but you have to respect each other's decisions, know that you're both independent thinkers, and whatever that topic is, if you're agreeing to disagree, it's probably not something that's going to be the end-all, be-all of your relationship. Again, I'm married, so I agree to disagree a lot because we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. We see eye to eye on the important things, but the little things. In a dating relationship, agree to disagree if it's something that can't be resolved but isn't the end-all, be-all of that relationship.
What if you're having arguments a lot at the beginning of a relationship?
That's a red flag. I don't understand why that's happening. Arguments at the beginning of a relationship usually turn into bigger arguments later. They rarely ever go away because people don't change, which is something I say all the time. You can't change anybody. Don't try to change them. If you're having arguments at the beginning of a relationship, you probably need to reconsider the relationship. What? Can you give me an example? Are you going to put you on the spot? of something that might come up early. Usually it's a one-sided relationship. Usually it's one of you is maybe clingy and the other one wants some space. That's usually going to be a problem. Okay, so listen. Even in the best of circumstances, there's going to be arguing. It's going to be difficult. But if that's how you start a relationship, you're setting yourself up for failure in a lot of ways, because if you can't handle whatever's happening now, what happens when the really big problems come, the really big events in your life, especially if you get married, right? I always say that life is going to throw so much suffering your way that if you're not entering into this relationship, or in my case, marriage, with on the same page, it's going to get difficult. If it starts out difficult in like the romance phase, the honeymoon phase, it's going to be really, really difficult to get past that. It's going to require like a whole clean slate, start fresh. And I don't know how many people are willing to do that when you're that early on. You haven't really invested that much. So relationships that start out volatile or difficult don't usually grow, in my opinion and in my experience.
Yeah, I agree. So say you do have a bad relationship and you get out of a bad relationship, how do you go about dating again?
Yeah, you gotta first build trust in yourself. You have to believe in your value, what your worth is. You have to grow from that past relationship, take away all the valuable lessons you learned, and you better have learned some valuable lessons. Take them with you. This is what I do want in another relationship. This is what I don't want. But you also have to trust in your own good judgment, because you might think that you don't have good judgment because of what happened, but you do. You do. You just have to step back. And then you also have to trust that there are people in this world who are worthy of your love. Just because the past relationship failed does not mean every other person is just like that person. It doesn't mean that if this person is not trustworthy, then no one's trustworthy. That is so far from the truth. Honestly, it's a blessing that ended, because it now offers you the opportunity to take this newfound knowledge and wisdom and apply it to the next relationship. And maybe it's going to be 2 or 3 relationships before you get to the one that actually clicks, or maybe it's more than that. If we go back to our last episode on chastity, as long as you've been guarding your heart, it doesn't matter how many people you date. It only matters how many people you date when you give them your whole heart, when you give them your whole body, when you give them everything because you think it's going to last forever, and then it doesn't. But if you've been guarding your heart, you can date as many people as you want or need to until the right one shows up, the one who matches your goals and dreams and who values you in ways that nobody else has up to that point.
Our last question here. Me and my boyfriend never go out. Is there more to a relationship than just hang out?
Oh my gosh, hangouts. That's a word I hear a lot. Yeah, there's more to it. You want to enjoy life together. Get out. And okay, yeah, sure, when you're in high school or college, you might not have money. You might not even have a car. Fine, get creative. When I first started dating your father, he had a car. So we drove to the beach all the time. Why? Because it was free. And it was beautiful, and it was easy to throw a blanket and bring some, to-go food and watch the sunset. Get out of the house. When you take somebody out, it doesn't be the guy, it could be the girl, it doesn't matter. When you take somebody out, you're expressing love for them, especially if your love language is quality time, like mine is. I don't want to sit around and watch football with you, which I did a lot of when I first started dating your father. And he realized that there was so much more to do besides that. Why can't we go see a movie? Why can't we grab a bite to eat? Why can't we go for a walk? Play tennis? Just do something. And there's plenty of things to do that don't require money or even a lot of creativity. When you just do hangouts, there's fewer opportunities for growth. There's fewer opportunities to learn about each other. And there's more opportunities for the temptation of just being alone in a room with a warm body. And then it becomes about sex and less about all the other stuff. Getting to know someone's heart and mind and really growing together. So yeah, if you're just sitting around and hanging out, I think that's a reflection that this relationship is not growing. And it needs to grow. And you both, not just one of you, but you both have to step out of your comfort zone. Try new things, especially if you have very different interests. I remember when I first started dating your father, and he loved golf. Still loves golf, of course, it's his whole life outside of us. I maybe didn't want to play so much as I wanted to follow him and kind of get to know that side of him. And it helped my relationship with him grow because I started to understand the game, understand what it meant to him, see him passionate about something, see him exercise his talents, which made me fall in love with him more. So you want to get out and explore what you love to do and what the other person loves to do. So maybe you don't want to go see a rom-com, but your girlfriend does because you know it will make her happy. Just go. And then go to dinner afterwards and you'll actually have things to talk about because you can, critique the film, whatever. Yeah, really important. Hangouts are not enough. Not enough. Is that it?
I completely agree. Yeah, that's it for our viewer questions.
So we're talking about intimacy, guys. Intimacy is so much more than a physical connection. It's sacred and it's cherished time. It's talking to each other. It's listening to each other. It's finding new things to do together that bring joy to one or the other. Make it about the relationship and the other person, not just about you. And know that there's a cycle. There's levels of intimacy. There's choices that you have to make because the feelings are going to go away. Sorry, I hate to burst your bubble, but the feelings go away. But you want to get back to those feelings by choosing to love this person. If at any point in a single relationship that cycle is not working, you get to get out. So get out while you can. Please don't marry somebody who you've got doubts about. Work through it and decide what's worth fighting for. How do I get back to the feeling of intimacy by choosing love every day? So, thank you guys.
You're welcome. That was great.
Painless.
That was great.
So thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you for listening and watching. Please email me your questions about anything. Comment. See if I can remember. Mrs. Hurlbut. No, just ask Mrs. Hurlbut at gmail.com. So thanks everybody. I'll see you soon.